this dreadful traffic in human lives brought English to the tribes of West Africa. British and American slavers trading upriver introduced the English language first to the African middlemen from whom they bought the slaves. They in turn passed English on to the human cargoes in the terrible holds of their ships. Mumbalo has been an upriver trading post ever since the landing of the first slavers. In those days, communication between blacks and whites depended on a new and simplified English, known as pidgin. Pidgin drew on many sources, African and European. Pickaninny and savvy came from Portuguese. The word pidgin itself may have come from the Chinese mispronunciation of business. The riverboat men, touting for business, still use pidgin English.
Tomorrow when you do Freetown, I want to let you bring cement can for me. Because then road transport business here not look correct. But how much for the bag for pay?
Like how many bags?
I get 150 bags. Where I want to let you bring can for me. So you will go meet me in the house now for the money, yeah?
All right.
Okay.
Riverboat captain Issa Fofona still follows the old slave route.
So let God go with you now.
All right, sir. Thank you, sir. All right. Listen up for me.
And when he casts off, he still uses pidgin English.
Bye-bye.
On this river, 6 languages are spoken. On a river like the Congo, as many as 160. In a situation like this, pidgin English has been a vital means of communication ever since the days of slavery. The English Creoles of West Africa are derived from those early pidgins. Spoken widely throughout West Africa, Creole is the language Issa Fofona naturally drops into when discussing pampams, riverboats, like his own motor launch, the ML Tabule.
Tanking comes up, they are ready to go according to the water. But by now, who would they go so for hang on for the water small?
Oh, we get for go with na bylaw
small. For let the water
flow.
Yeah, for let the water flow. Why for the bank take all over? You know we go back. You see, you get some rock in here. For the ridge just now. You get some rock in here. You know one boat through the water deep so long distance from the water and the floor. But then why then flat bottom, you know they take boku from the water. See, now make you know they chop the stone.
But una know them get Victoria, then get ML Samu, ML Nasirullah, all them plenty. ML family they all. So they all don't go out of style. Now na the pamper them.
You know Victoria na Bonibon.
Oh, na Bonibon.
Na Bonibon.
Like pidgin English, African Creole has its own rules. Ide go means he goes. Idongo means he went. Ibinde go, he was going. He get for go means he must go. As in Gullah, small means very small or very slow.
Go small, go small. Go. Go.
Yes, sir. Namabul. All right.
On his journey, Issa Fofona passes Bunce Island. The ruins of an old slave fort still stand here. When the slaves arrived here from the African interior, they would have talked many different languages. For fear of revolt, the slave traders deliberately mixed up these different language groups. Deprived of a common language, the slaves had to fall back on their own version of the King's English. By the early 18th century, Pidgin English was so widespread that it was even appearing in British fiction, on the lips of Man Friday, Robinson Crusoe's black servant. Cut off from their homeland, generations of Man Fridays slowly forgot their native languages, like Wolof and Hausa. Even before they left Africa, many of the slaves were already speaking Pidgin English. The slave trade carried Pidgin English across the Atlantic on the notorious Middle Passage. Many slaves were dumped in the West Indies, where a West Indian patois closely related to Gullah and to West African Creole survives to this day. But the majority went to the southern states of America. From 1720 to 1860, Charleston, South Carolina was the slave capital of the American South. The old slave market exists to this day. It's now a museum. The blacks were brought here from the ships to be auctioned. On this balcony, they became the property of the plantation owners. And the Pidgin English they took with them from here became the basis of plantation Creole. Of course, they also took with them a wealth of African speech, a lot of which ultimately found its way into American English. It's now thought that that most American of all expressions has as its most plausible derivation the languages of West Africa. In those languages, it is wake or okay. In American, and now all over the world, it's okay. Slavery, which lasted well into the days of photography, affected the speech of masters and slaves. The cotton and rice fields and the plantation houses became the cradle of a new black American culture. Despite their emancipation by the troops of the Union, life and language on the plantations hardly changed until after the First World War. In the early days, the English of the slaves would have sounded very similar to the Gullah we've already heard. Plantation Creole is the usual term for the English spoken in the old slave quarters. Professor J.L. Dillard is the acknowledged scholar of black English. Today, he more than anyone traces Plantation Creole back to Gullah and West African Pidgin English.
Plantation Creole emerged in the slave quarters, especially among the field hands, as a direct development out of this Pidgin English, which had been used in the slave trade on the ships and elsewhere. If you take, for example, Gullah of the deepest sort, you'll get the expression like him go, which is either he goes or he went. It's a point of time kind of thing. It can be translated by he goes or he went. If you want to make it a continuous kind of thing rather than a point of time, you add the particle da, him da go. If you want to put it in definitely into the past, it becomes him been go, the remote past. If you put it into the more recent past, it comes out him done go.
On Middleton Plantation, the speech of an old black servant like Martha DeWeese is full of plantation Creole phrases like I done gone, I goes, and I done feed.
Go ahead, don't turn back. Go on, you're going right. I feed the birds them. Go ahead. And I call them Freckle. That's the gal. And they come out there running behind me. So till I done feed them. And then after when I done feed them, then I go in the house and do my work. I clean, dust. And when I get through in there, I go down to the rice mill and clean up down there every other day.
The daughter of a man born into slavery in the days of Abraham Lincoln, her everyday speech is a direct descendant of Gullah and Plantation Creole.
Well, he was 105 when he died. My daddy was born at Milton. Yeah, he was a slave then time. Back in them time, he was a slave.